Hey everybody, so in this module we're going to start talking about Shiny. Shiny is a package in R that allows you to make web applications based on your R code. So by web applications, I mean applications that allow users to explore data, change parameters, and see the results of an analysis dynamically on the web. So this takes interactivity, which we've already talked about a little bit previously in the course, to another level. Okay. So a few things about Shiny apps. First, like I said, the Shiny apps are based on your R code, so you don't have to have web development skills in order to do this. That can be helpful if you want to customize your app, but really you can do pretty much everything you need to do just using your R code. So you don't need to know HTML or CSS or anything like that. Another thing that I want to say is that for at least in R, there's a Python version that's a little bit different, but we're going to be talking about R Shiny. So at least in R, if you want to host the app somewhere, if you want to display the app to a broader audience, you want to show other people your app, you need to host it somewhere. And we're not going to do that here. We're just going to render our apps locally or run our apps locally and interact with them on our machines. And then in the next, in a couple of modules, we're going to learn how to host them. Okay, but for now, we're just going to be running them on our own machines and learning how to create the apps. There are basically three components of the app. There's a user interface, which is what the user interacts with. So you have to design that. There's special code for that. There's a server function which does all the calculations for your app and produces the visualization or visualizations that you want to display to the user. Okay, and then there's a call to the Shiny app, which is basically one line of code. It's very simple, but without it, your app won't run. Okay, in addition to those three main components of the code, there's also usually a setup code chunk at the beginning of the app where you're prepping data and that type of thing. All right, and I'm going to run you through all of those elements of the code in this lesson, and then in the next module, or actually in this lesson, we're going to go through just the setup code chunk, the setup part of it. But in this module, I'll run you through all the various elements of the Shiny code that I just discussed, and then we'll perfect that a little bit with another example in the next module. All right. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and jump in. All right, so what we want to do here is a little bit different than what we've done in previous lessons, where we've just been working with a simple Quarto document. So we want to start a new project, but this time we're going to start a new Shiny app project. All right, so go to File, go to New Project, and then go to New Directory and click on Shiny Application and decide where you want to save it. I think for the purposes of this example, I'm just going to save this one on my desktop. All right, and give it a directory name. And I'll just call this, we're going to make a scatter plot here, so I'll just call it scatter plot. And hit Create Project. Okay, and when you create a project, the first thing you're going to see is this starter code. Okay, and this is we can just go ahead and run this app if you want to see what a Shiny app looks like. This is not the one that we're going to be developing, but this is basically a histogram app where you change the number of bins in the histogram. Okay, and you can see there's the histogram, there's the number of bins, and then as you change, you manipulate the slider, it changes the number of bins in the histogram. Okay, and here you can see the basic elements of the code that I was talking about: the user interface or UI, the server function, and then the call to the Shiny app. Okay, and we're just going to leave that there for now, and we're going to start a new file here because we want to wrangle our data from the V-Dem dataset And we're not going to be able to do this dynamically because the V-Dem dataset is so large. So if we want to host it on shinyapps.io or something like that, we might run into problems with the free version at least, because it will require more capacity than what we would have with the free version, basically. So let's go ahead and actually start a new R script to wrangle our data. We don't even need a Quarto document for this. Okay, so we can go ahead and load V-Dem, load dplyr, and load readr, or if you want to just load the tidyverse, you can do that. Okay, and we're gonna download some data from V-Dem, wrangle it, and store it in this object called dem data, and then ultimately we're going to save that as a CSV file that we're going to use for the app. Okay, so so we'll call V-Dem like we've been doing throughout the course. We'll filter it, and we'll take the years, all of the observations after 2000 for all of the countries, and then in the database. And then we're going to select a bunch of variables. We're going to select the country name, and rename it country. We're going to select polyarchy. This should look familiar to you by now. V2X polyarchy. Should be polyarchy, sorry about that. And client. We're going to download some measures of governance. In addition to just the polyarchy score, we're going to download measures of clientelism, corruption, and women's empowerment. So clientelism, and the V-Dem code for that is V2XNP_client. And corruption, and the V-Dem code for that is V2XNP reg core, and then women's empowerment, V2X_gender. And then we're going to download some data pertaining to economic development. So first we'll do GDP per capita. And then we'll do infant mortality. And the V-Dem code for that is PE_PEIN infmore, PE infmore. And then life expectancy, and the V-Dem code for that is E_PELIEFEEX, education, and the V-Dem code for that is E_PEAVEDUC, and then region, and the V-Dem score for that is E_region Paul_6C. So we're going to include a region code so that we can color our points by region as we've been doing throughout the course, but in this case it's going to be in the context of a Shiny app. All right, and then we're going to pipe all of this into a mutate call. All right, and then we're going to do our region code here. So we'll give ourselves a little space, and we will say region equals case match region, and then we will do 1 tilde, one-sided formula here to assign 1 to Eastern Europe. All right, 2 is going to be assigned to Latin America. 3 to the Middle East. 4 to Africa. 5 to the West, 6 to Asia. Okay. All right, and then we're going to pipe that into a group by and summarize sequence so that we can get the mean score for each country from 2000 onward. Okay, so we're going to do group by, country, and region. We're going to include region in there because we want region to stay in the database. Otherwise, dplyr will just drop it out. So country, region, and then we'll do summarize all, meaning summarize all of these variables by the mean, and then drop the missing values. na.rm equals true. Let's go ahead and run that and make sure it works. And to run the code in our script, we need to highlight it all. So let's go ahead and run it. Okay, and it didn't like something. Can't subset columns that don't exist. Oh, I see the problem. This is a capital C, not a lowercase c. So let's go ahead and run that again. Okay, and we get a little object down here. And actually a pretty big object. So that's all of our data. So basically we have the raw data that we would need for our scatter plots. So we have data on democracy, clientelism, corruption, women's empowerment, GDP per capita, infant mortality, life expectancy, education, the region coding here, and then the country. Okay, and we have data for 179 countries. That all looks correct. All right, and then what we're going to do from here is we're just going to call write CSV dem data, and we're going to call this file dem underscore data.csv. All right, and then actually let's go ahead and save this before we go any further as data underscore wrangling, and that'll appear over here. And so we should be good there. And let's go ahead and run this last line of code here to produce our CSV file. All right, and there we have our CSV file. But that's what we're going to use for our app. Okay. So then the next thing I want to do in this video, in this lesson, is just this setup code chunk that is going to read this data in that we just produced. And so we'll be all set up to make our app. And in the next video, I'll tell you a little bit more about the app that we're going to be making, and we'll start making the UI. Okay, but let's go ahead and get this last part done. And so to do this, why don't we go ahead and just delete all of this out in our app.r file. We're not going to change the name of this file, just leave it as app.r, but you can go ahead and delete out all the code in there. Okay, and what we can go ahead and do is start adding the elements of code that we need for our particular app. We can start doing the setup. So first thing we're going to do is load our packages. So of course we're going to load Shiny to start because that's the main package that we need, obviously. We're going to do readr to read in the data, and we're going to do ggplot2 to make our plot ultimately. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is to load the data, and we're going to load it into an object called dem underscore data, and so we'll call read underscore CSV. And here we're going to read in the data that we just produced from the CSV file. All right, and let's go down and now create another code chunk. And here what we're going to do is we are going to create a list of named values for the input selection. And it'll become clearer what I mean here in a little bit. I'm not going to get, this video is already getting long and I just want to do the setup here, but I'll tell you more about exactly what we're going to do. But these are going to be values for a drop-down menu where users can select the indicators that they want to work with. Okay, you'll see what we're going to do in the next video. But okay, so we'll go and we're going to call this basically this vector of values, of named values, vars. Okay, and we're going to use the combine function to create it. And the first one is going to be called democracy. All right. And democracy is going to be the polyarchy score, the polyarchy variable from our dem underscore data.csv file. Okay, so we're going to have democracy, clientelism, corruption, women's empowerment, wealth, infant mortality, life expectancy, and education. Okay, so let's do each of those. So democracy, clientelism equals clientelism, corruption equals corruption. All right, and just to clarify a little bit here, the reason I'm typing each value twice in these lines is because this is going to be the name that we see in the drop-down menu, and this is what we want to pull from the CSV file, just so that's totally clear in case you're confused about that. So corruption equals corruption, women's empowerment equals women's underscore EMP. All right, wealth equals GDP per capita, infant mortality equals inf underscore mort, life expectancy equals life underscore exp, education equals education. Education. All right, let's make sure we have them all here. There should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So democracy, clientelism, corruption, women's empowerment, wealth, infant mortality, life expectancy, and education. Okay? And that's it. And we're not going to run this yet because the app isn't finished. This is just the setup. And in the next video, what I'm going to show you is how to build the user interface. And then in the video after that, how to build the server. And then we'll call the app, we'll call the Shiny app at that point. We'll run the Shiny app at that point just by clicking this button. But we're not going to do it now because it's not ready yet. Okay? So I'll see you in the next video on how to build the UI for this app.